Hi, I'm Katie. I know we've been running across each other and sort of passing by each other in digital space for a bit. And I just wanted to orient you to this document that is a living document. It is where I've been placing the primary concepts and what I believe are the most important physical aspects of the totality of everything I've been working on. And I'm calling it Neuroaffective Somatics for a couple of reasons. The primary one is while this is yoga, yogic, and from yoga lineage, it would be unethical for me to bring this forward as a form of yoga because I am not coming into this only or solely as the recipient of a teaching lineage. So this is all very much me, which is really strange for me to contemplate some days. And also I'm really grateful. So let's just see what I wrote. It's been a little bit. Oh, here we go. There I am. That's me. And this says something very fancy, but really, I'm coming to you today. I'm 55. I have survived a stroke. I've survived isolated treatment for stage 3 breast cancer at the height of the COVID pandemic. And I witnessed the totality, the very most intense years of the COVID pandemic while experiencing the cancer treatment. So a lot of what I've put into this framework has to do with what I did to both survive and stay sane. And as it so happens, it turns out it all ended up being back to the body. There is so much science in here. I know science. We can talk science. It all ended up going back to the body. And you're having a hard time possibly seeing all of these words, but the guiding principle of all of this is tensegrity. Tensegrity is a design principle. It's an architecture principle. It's also a virtue of geometry in Taoist alchemy. So let's just see when I finally, here we go. She finally got to a point. So the term neuroaffective, and that's actually a piece of my art there, speaking to the experience of chakras and how active the chakra experience is from India. But neuroaffective generally is used to describe approaches to science and research and questions and ontology that is looking at the nature of something more than how it's being measured or what can be proven. So it is very much about the what and the how and the why, not only the definitions. Neuroaffective research in neuroscience lands in a whole field called affective neuroscience. And what am I drinking? Gatorade. Makes me look like an amazing hippie, doesn't it? I'm grateful to my neighbors for this one. Okay. Neuroaffective frameworks, neuroaffective contemplation is looking at our emotions as something that is both coming from our nervous system and our experience of psychology. Chinese medicine contemplates something like a neurophysiological basis as psycho-emotional. So Chinese medicine isn't fully in this document that we're going over right now. And it's all, everything that I'm bringing forward is based on Chinese medicine. The foundation of neuroaffective somatics is the practice of trauma-informed care. And thankfully, I didn't have to make that up. This is from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration here in the United States. It's a wonderful, wonderful description of the experience of trauma-informed care and the experience of growth after trauma. So the guiding principles are that we are operating from a place of safety. And here, safety genuinely means harm reduction. It's not harm eliminating. So we're aiming to reduce harm. The way peer support shows up is through shared experience and also this attitude and this understanding that everybody has something to share, everyone. It doesn't matter how messed up you think you are or how many mistakes you've made. Every one of us has something to offer when it comes to describing and feeling into the experience of healing and the experience of growth. Empowerment and choice within the context of trauma-informed care generally has to do with how the folks within the context are experiencing their own agency and sovereignty. And for humans who look like I do, I am white, that almost always means that we need to back off and listen. It's almost always an invitation for us to listen. This trustworthiness and transparency is something I'm really working on bringing forward in this model. And that has to do, at least with me, it has to do with being clear about scope of practice and how it's very easy to know a whole bunch more about something than it's appropriate to either disseminate, teach, or claim. Trustworthiness and transparency in trauma-informed care has an experience of, it can be experienced as a kind of like a rhythm of not normalcy, but just a rhythm of flow, where the organizations and the folks in the organization are responsive and also consistently aiming to, again and again, experience less trauma, experience less. These cultural, historical, and gender issues are the full foundation of my work. I don't know if you can see that from where you're sitting. Cultural, historical, and gender issues in neuroaffective somatics is very simply the global slave trade. And the fact that we have all inherited so much from that. Nobody can be independently or just as a one person fully aware or measure. But it has impacted all of us as well, and very much having to do with how we understand health and sanity. So part of what neuroaffective somatics is aiming to do is expand and broaden the playing field of health and wellness and post-traumatic growth so that we can actually experience it without having to tear everything down first. There are many teachings from India that parallel the trauma-informed care, and so I have some of them listed here. Satya speaking to transparency. Ahimsa is this idea of peace and nonviolence. Sangha as an expression of peer support and experiencing community. Not just being told you're in one, experiencing community. The tapas speak to different behaviors and practices that a yoga student would cultivate. Those are, again, inherently trauma-informed. This is all inherently trauma-informed. So all of these trainings that come up about you can be a trauma-informed yoga instructor, they're reminding us of these things. Maybe you don't have to go to a trauma-informed something to become trauma-informed. You can cultivate it as you are, as we are. So we don't need to go into these Taoist principles. There are three main treasures in Taoism that speak to virtue. I have them translated here as compassion, frugality, and humility. I often share frugality as moderation. So compassion having to do with how we contemplate our relationship to our own body and how we bring that forward into how we encourage other people into relationships with their bodies. Moderation, very much as it relates to having a whole body. Less is almost always more, especially for those of us who carry trauma. And if you're just joining, we're going through a document. Okay, none of this is a slide. This is a document. I think you get it with your free materials. I'm just bringing us through. So top down and bottom up processing is something that shows up quite a bit in conversations about neurodivergence and very much in conversations about autism. Top-down processing is cognitive based, meaning it's going to be contemplating the what, the how, the measure, the who, the blah, blah, blah of you and me. So all cognitive therapy, dialectic therapy, cognitive-based therapy, even something like internal family systems that I'm starting to bring forward has an inherent top-down to it. The bottom-up here that we're seeing, what does this show? This shows yoga, EMDR, this sensory motor psychotherapy. If you're, let me just get my cursor over it where the flame is. This, in the practice of Taoist alchemy, this is the very front of our brain. This is the front where the MBCT is. So just looking at this image, the flames are your tongue and jaw. I think it's really fascinating that this kind of ended up with that. When we're more in the fully Taoist context, I'll be able to show you how that maps to your head and brain. But the very most important thing I think there is to contemplate with top-down anything is top-down is going to end up either being a ladder, a flow chart, or a zero-sum game. There is absolutely no way to win top-down and stay human and alive. And again, that's because of the way the Western medical model grew, not because of how it is, because of where it came from, which was the global slave trade. Bottom-up processing is typically what folks would call neurodivergent processing and such. I have yet to hear somebody describe bottom-up processing authentically and accurately to how neuroscience actually propagates and shows up in our bodies. So I might be here to disrupt a little bit about what you understand about bottom-up processing. But if you're looking at the brain, the bottom-up processing in the brain is from the brain stem up and forward. So bottom-up processing in the brain would occur closer to our cerebellum, which is responsible for our voluntary movement, our pons, which is kind of like a little bra strap over and in front of the brainstem and medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata is responsible for our involuntary movement. Top down, bottom up, it is not flipping a piece of paper over, friends. It is not at all. I wish that it was, because it would be a lot easier to be neurodivergent. I am saying, though, that in many ways, polyvagal theory is neuroaffective in nature. It is not a neuroaffective model, but in nature it is, because it brings us into the body. It brings us into a kind of a whole experience of the body. We get to see beautiful images that look like a brain in your belly, and it's really lovely. But Stephen Porges so when did he do this? I think he wrote his dissertation in the 90s. It may have been earlier. I didn't find Stephen Porges until probably 2005. So I've only been familiar with his work for about 20 years. I have yet to see anything change. I'm suspicious about theories that don't change in 20 years. The science words that are in the framework that I'm bringing forward, which as it relates to our bodies is neuroaffective somatics, is orientation. So that's how you and I understand ourselves in relation to our surroundings. Like if you ever try to give me directions somewhere, and as soon as it gets beyond one turn, I'm done. If you give me a direction that has anything to do with north south, it's over. I get very disoriented. Contemplation is not a word that we're really brought into by modern psychology, and I'm suggesting that we start. Contemplation is a way to think about something without having to make a decision, definition, or like commitment. It's very lovely, very, very lovely. And as I've noted here, it involves our prefrontal cortex. So just going back a couple pages, it's going to get, contemplation is going to get us into the part of the brain that the psychology folks and the neuroscience folks are telling us is so very important to like being mature. And prefrontal cortex, I don't think it matures until we're into our 20s. So contemplation is a really amazing practice, and you get that with me. I'm sure you can get that elsewhere. Proprioception has to do with how you and I understand our positioning in space, positioning. If you know anybody who has a tendency to walk into walls, that would be proprioception. I have very, very exciting proprioception. I walk into walls often. I also drop things very frequently. My body personally experiences quite a bit of neuropathy, which influences how the totality of signals across my whole nervous system functions. And proprioception is, it's a very, very relevant experience to neurodivergence, injury, and disability. Because our bodies don't function and operate normally or usually, and the world is absolutely, most architecture, just buildings are built for usual movement. This is one of the places where accommodations start to kind of get a little bit relevant. Nociception means that you're feeling pain. Interoception is very involved in how we understand signals from our body, like hunger. Exteroception has to do with how we involve our external senses. Exteroception in particular is a focus in the emotional alchemy of Chinese medicine and of Taoist cosmology. Exteroception, 5 primary senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, map to, correspond, and are married with the 5 main elements of Chinese medicine: earth, fire, water, metal, and wood. So anytime we see a 5, we're in the 5 senses. Very convenient. There's not a lot of math to do with this. I know this is very jargony, but it kind of has to be. I do not like the TIONs. I must say this to you. I find the TIONs to be quite bothersome, and they have a tendency to end me up in like meetings with the Securities Exchange Commission. The fucking like so I'm introducing the SHEN. And the SHEN, we get to have the same words, but the indicator Shen is like, how is it that we experience this though? Like, how are we really experiencing it? And that's in alignment and in harmony with Taoist's only law, which is you're not allowed to name it. I said not allowed. Not that it can't be. But you would need to know so much about Tao to know that you're not allowed to name it. So I'm just going to make it easy for all of us. SHEN in the land of KDZ, land of Shentegrity, land of neuroaffective. SHEN is when we get to own the meaning. We get to own it. You own it. What does your orientation, what does that mean for you? What does your experience of pain mean for you? So my nociception, my experience of chronic pain is so consistent for the last 40, 45 years. Last summer, I was having anaphylactic reactions over the course of 3 days and never even bothered to call 911 or anything. I just yogaed through it because I had no idea. I had no idea, but also wasn't really bothering me. So the Shentegrity model and all of the charts that you're seeing with the different Chinese medicine and everything is to expand the mind, expand where your retina is looking back in your brain. So if we just look at this nice little figure here, the face with the glasses, the back of her eyes, whenever anything comes in, it's all of the visuals and audio that comes in gets flipped up and backwards. And then our brain has to reorient it, speaking of orientation. And then a whole bunch of other parts of our brain need to disseminate that information to our body. And sometimes we get accused of having bad executive functioning, as an example, right? So if you and I can't demonstrate orientation, demonstrate proprioception, demonstrate all of this, there are contexts where we're going to be doxed points or given a label. It's not good or bad. It's just how it works, okay? But it's good to know how it works, because then when you complain about the system, you have a little bit more to complain about. You at least understand a little bit more. So this is a pretty big, I have a couple streams going here. Let me get this expanded for the stuff that's happening on my phone. This page, this is one of the original images I did when I was starting to bring together the polyvagal theory of fight, flight, freeze, appease, and actual Chinese medicine. And I'm saying actual Chinese medicine because there is nothing I'm bringing into this from China that is theory. Everything I'm bringing into this from China is either fact or so documented for so many thousands of years, neither of us needs to worry about it as it might relate to philosophy or inquiry. Cannot say this about polyvagal theory. So rather than make polyvagal theory and all of my teachers wrong, which they are, I'm just going to give them a present and we're going to make it pretty. So the polyvagal theory is on the left side of this figure. And all I'm doing is mapping. So it's very much like astrology, where the human in the middle, this figure is one whole human, has 3 little zones, 3 little energy zones. Hypoarousal is a low zone. So I'm just mapping it to the low zone. And then we can also contemplate the action as decreasing, or it's called restriction in Chinese medicine. So one of the things that you're being brought into with this framework is the benefit and the power of using symbols, symbolic language, and brains like mine to, and I'm not the only one who thinks like this, but to do these kinds of bridges so you and I don't need to change any of the meaning ever. Don't need to change it, don't need to adopt it. And over time, you'll find that you don't need to be appropriating as much language if you're an instructor or a guide. This will start giving you a way to make a distinction, because now we have 3 buckets, not 2. So there's no either or now. Now there's 3. You're already attuned to 3. You have a stop sign stoplight right near where you live. So it's very convenient. It's going to be a little bit different. You're going to feel like you have this whole new understanding of the world and your body. And all you will have received is scaffolding, is what it's called for children who are learning. And then you can look up all the polyvagal stuff if that's really important. But let's take a look at these energy centers. Down in the low belly here is Jing, Jing. It's our essence. And I actually have it assigned to the Velveteen Rabbit. If you haven't read the Velveteen Rabbit's about a little stuffed bunny. It's a very little stuffed bunny, and the bunny wants to be real, and it's this whole gorgeous story. And then this quote is, I just think, so beautiful, that you become. It takes a long time. And that's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in your joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all because you're real. You can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. Isn't that beautiful? She has such a lovely, it's just a beautiful story. And it also speaks to Jing, this lower energy zone, as being a finite. It is finite in nature. This is not infinite. So our basis, the foundation of human, is finite. There is no single one of us that is meant to go on forever. No single one. We, as a species, are bloodlines, but one individual, In the heart center, in the middle of us, is where we experience chi. You might know it as prana or energy or life force energy. And I assigned Tigger to this. There's a wonderful book called The Tao of Poo, the Tao of Poo. And the Tao of Poo is a really lovely, it kind of reads like a children's book, and it's written for folks who are interested in learning about Taoism. And this is a quote from it. Tigger says, "How do you do it, Pooh?" And Pooh's like, "What?" Tigger says, "Become effortless." Now, effortless is the essence of Tao. And he's like, "I don't do much of anything." And Tigger's like, "But all of the things of yours get done." And Pooh's like, "They just sort of happen. It just happens." Also, Pooh is into honey and doesn't wear pants. I think we should all love a Pooh. Winnie the Pooh, Sherwood Forest, Christopher Robin. It's such a beautiful, beautiful universe, I guess is what folks are calling it now. At the very top of us in our head and neck, and this area up here is the upper dantian, or the crystal palace. I've assigned it the Little Prince, just from a media perspective. The Little Prince, I first was introduced to this actually through the opera. It's a story about a sick boy. There's a cosmic component, a planetary component, and here he just says it's only with the heart that you can see. What's essential is not visible to the eye. Doesn't mean it's not real, it's not visible to the eye. And we all need to remember that our eyes see much more than these systems had. They didn't have microscopes, they didn't have telescopes, they didn't have, drones. So you and I get to the planet with our sense of bum. And then I think I have a little script here for you. Sense of bum is connecting your ass to grass, either literally or through just like sitting and noticing. And I'm really being literal about your body to something that you're on. This is going to accomplish three things. One, you will be in the same space time as your body, or at least oriented in that direction. The second is it connects you to the planet. So when we're contemplating the body, you're already there. And the third thing it does is it fucks with medicine, Western medicine that only contemplates bodies fixed and on a table. Fixed as in unable to move. On a table as in either prepared for surgery or autopsy. So we're going to work with bodies as though they're alive. Okay. Healing smile and healing sounds are the initial practices that folks who are coming into this system learn to begin toning and bringing equanimity into the experience of our organs. I have them shown in strange ways here. The lungs, our lungs are the seat of grief and courage. And I gave you a little quote. Kidneys are where we experience shock and calm. This is this gate of life in the inner alchemy. Liver is where we experience anger and forgiveness. Our heart is where we experience hatred and love. And our spleen is where we experience worry and trust. This is not saying that we only have those emotions or that's the only experience we can have. But it is saying that in Chinese medicine, invasive, when you and I go to the doctor, to the Chinese medicine doctor, these are the organs and they're paired with another organ. These are the ones that they're thinking about for us. And then I gave you a cheat sheet. Really want you to contemplate yin and yang as a Triskelion. I know that that is not usual to contemplate yin and yang as a trine. Taoist alchemy is a Triskelion. All of Taoist alchemy is based on threes. The easiest third thing to contemplate is this Shen, S-H-E-N. So if there is a Shen present, awesome. If there isn't, you're just not aware of it or you can't perceive it. Yin, yang, Shen. Shen on the planet is, in this way, is the corona of the planet. There are 5 elements I had mentioned. I guess we're going to take a little journey and then we'll probably be about done with this. This is one of the first pieces of art I actually made when I was designing this. And the vermilion bird of the South is one of the ways that the fire element is identified in the body. Notice I said identified. So there's a law that you can't name it. The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So as a practitioner, if I'm guided to the vermilion bird, I know that I'm working with the fire element. That's what it's really telling me. This is our heart. This is also the seat of the main spirit of all of the spirits. How would I make that a parallel? If the 5 Shen of our main organs were a team, the heart Shen would be whatever the leader of the team is. And the Shen that lives in our brain would be the, like, I don't know, the coach or something. Maybe that's a good way of contemplating it. And Taoism animates our organs. So they're not contemplated as existing, they're contemplated as vital. And there's a little bit of personification here that I think is really useful. Let's see. Hello. There we go. So with the fire element here, I've given you some images that you can take a look at. The dudes are it's an image that gives you the pathway of these meridians or the energy channels on the body. There are also energy channels in the body. On the body, like a surface map, this is where those energy channels are. And then you have a little bit of, what it goes with, because why not? It's pretty cool. Next is Earth. I love that it's a yellow dragon because it often becomes the yellow emperor. I like this piece of art as well. And it's to our spleen is the organ. And then here's a little bit about your spleen. So I think something I really find fascinating is how long these meridians are. So in that left image, I'm not sure how you're receiving this information right now, but the spleen goes down and around us. It is it's like there's some action going on there. And then here's the stomach. So the spleen is a really important organ. Spleens in research right now are being looked at as a very important factor in the immune system. The metal element in our body is governed by the white tiger. If we are in the realm of alchemy, it becomes the white tigress, and it's a girl. Ha, ha, ha. So lung is like the advisor, and our lung meridian is very close to the heart meridian. It's arms, upper body. We're actually in the season right now. We are in the season of metal. Wood is associated with our liver and collective consciousness. So when we speak about consciousness and community and everything, the wood element is speaking to the whole. And then again, it's in your liver. It's associated with the color green. And our liver, this gallbladder, look at the gallbladder, goes all the way. It's another one of those big, 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 giant, lots going on in the head with the gallbladder. So toning the liver supports the gallbladder. That's a good thing. And then our water element in the body is assigned to a black tortoise. The universal divination from China, that is Lo Shu, also occurs on the back of a tortoise, a black tortoise. Tortoises and turtles have that in and out of water quality to them. I just love how consistent and persistent these abstractions and the metaphors show up again and again and again and again. It's very comforting. And kidney chi is about mobilization. So this is what's going to be primarily impacted with spikes, with acute situations, especially stress responses. Uh-oh, we might be done. We're done. Uh-oh, that was that. Okay, well, if you're on a platform and you were expecting a perfectly coiffed professional something, I'm hoping that you're realizing that it matters a lot more what you get from it than what I look like coming into your living room. And my name's Katie. I really do. I love this stuff. There's so much I have to share. This is just a really nice introduction, and it's with all of the free materials you receive when you either sign up for a newsletter, join the Bean Scene, or join Substack. So I hope you have a lovely evening, and be well.